actually Occupy for the last 3 years of my life, and been involved in setting up the Occupy Research Collective, which is kind of still hobbling along just about. I thought it's really important to have kind of some semi-formal spaces in which people have been spending all this time, and sometimes money as well, researching Occupy London and other Occupy movements, to actually feed some of that back to people who've been involved and might not be in the kind of academic circles. I think that's super important, rather than just publishing articles and journals and so on and so on, but actually, is there anything that we've learned which is of use? So that was really the idea of today, and like I say, it could be the start of further things to come. And because I wanted it to be quite accessible and open, I suggested that we would just have quite short and to the point presentations, and even presentation I think might be too much of a word. So there's no PowerPoint or any of that kind of thing. But the idea was just to have a few minutes just to briefly summarize in plain English what it is that you or we've been doing, and what will come some of the useful or interesting findings that we've got from it, which could be relevant to people who are still involved in Occupy, who are involved in other movements, and so on. And I think these kind of spaces of reflection are hopefully very useful, and we could do with a lot more of them. So the proposal is that we try and finish by 8, because it's still a nice summer's evening, and I'm sure people want to enjoy a bit of it. Even though we're a small group, and I'm saying this partly to myself, it would be good if we could speak up, because I can sense that it might be difficult to hear each other. And what I'll do then is just confirm now, if you put your hand up, if you want to present. Most of you have told me, but just so we confirm, if you've got something that you'd like to present. And it could even be someone who's done research that's very small, and just you've got 30 seconds to say. So, you two, are you going to say something as well? That's fine. It's up to you. Maybe you can make it just really short, like in a paragraph, if you'd like.
Say something about what's happening now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have also done research on Occupy London, haven't you? Maybe it would be interesting for people just to hear like a synopsis.
I'll do that. I'll say one line about that.
Right. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us. Did anyone else put their hand up? I missed? Mate. Okay, so if we were to speak for 5 minutes each, that would be 25 minutes. And if there was another 5 minutes of questions for each one, at most that would be 50 minutes. And it's 8:20, so the idea was afterwards we could then just have a bit of an open chat about what kind of use is all this research anyway. Other general questions about what else we could do with this research, how we can make it useful, and just a general sort of chat. So the proposal is maybe 5 minutes to summarise the research, with like 5 minutes to have a bit of a question and answer, and then an open discussion. How do people feel about that for their use of a Friday evening? Any other suggestions or proposals for how we use our time? Cool. So, does anyone have a preference for what order they go in? Particular, like first or last? Second?
It's very specific.
Don't want to go first.
I can see why, yeah.
You guys, preference?
I'd rather not go first.
Yeah. More names, perhaps.
Okay, so we're going to go. So you can't hear? Yeah, so when we're speaking out, we just boom our voice out.
Shall we move together a bit?
We could come in like a half a foot or something.
I think come towards the camera as well, because the camera's setting up.
Yeah, this is where the camera is.
Balanced.
So if we go, Paul, you go first, and Kate wants to go second. And then you guys can go third and fourth, and I'll go last. Is that cool? And I'm going to be a strict timer. And when it gets to 5 minutes, I'll start making funny faces, and then I'll just like jump up and down, and that'll be cut-off point. So, yeah, that'll be the most exciting part of the day. Cool. All right. So, do you want to kick off? And 5 minutes. You don't have to use all of it if you don't want to. Okay. So, if you just introduce yourself again at the start and a bit of context.
So my name's Paul. I'm in a religious studies department at the Open University. I went to the Occupy protest on October the 15th, and when it became clear that there was going to be an eviction, I I decided to start doing field work around the camp. I suppose one of the main things I concluded was the occupation itself brought two things into sharp relief. On the one hand, St Paul's, which symbolised the idea of a moral, territorially defined community, the parish, if you like. And on the other symbol, the other part of the binary was the stock exchange, which was symbolising something very different. It was unregulated spatially and amoral. Okay, so my analysis just said that the camp brought these two poles into sharp relief, thereby creating something for occupiers and publics to think of. Okay, that's that. Occupy Hong Kong. I also been to Hong Kong in December to talk to the people who took part in the occupation of the HSBC Bank, which was also part of the global Occupy movement. That was the longest single occupation of a single site of all the global occupations that took place throughout the world. What you're seeing today, Occupy Central Love and Peace, is not directly related to the original Occupy movement, except there are, of course, overlaps of people. But the main link between what happened then and what's happening now is the Occupy as a methodology. So Occupy Central Love and Peace decided that the key learning lesson of Occupy was the occupation of public space. Hong Kong's like London, like many other cities, urban space is increasingly securitized and gated. The Occupy camp was a way of trying to change that, of enchanting that space, taking the space back from capital, taking it back from Beijing in the case of what's going on now in Hong Kong. So Occupy, what you're seeing now in Hong Kong is the application of the method that we all grew to love and hate those years ago, and probably that's enough of me.
Awesome, sharp and succinct. So, so the idea of afterwards is just more kind of direct questions about that research, and then afterwards we're going to have a more general discussion about what the use of research is, what we can do with it. So, any specific questions to Paul about his research? Yeah. If you speak up, please.
I understand the idea of developing a methodology in applied elsewhere. I'm interested in that, and I would say that. But one of the things which struck me was this binary opposition of moral and amoral, so the goodies and the baddies sort of clearly separated. I have a doubt.
I'm not trying to say the church are the goodies and the bones are the baddies so much as saying one symbolises, at least ideally, like an ideal type, ideally the moral community bound together by shared values, where the stock exchange, particularly since the Big Bang of 86 or whatever it was, is total deregulation, total flow, total mobility of capital as against the increasing securitization of space and the movements of particularly poor and vulnerable people. So I think it was about trying to, the Occupy camp crafted a binary that brought these poles together for us to see in a way that maybe it wasn't visible before. I'm not saying that is what it means. I'm not saying it's goodies and baddies so much as creating something, an analytic that you can then use to think with about what's happened. It's not about good churches and bad banks so much as flows and non-flows, communities and communities. Whether we're Christians or any members of any religion, what religions do is they coagulate communities around shared practices and moral values. It's questionable to me whether capitalism does any such thing as that.
So it does.